Hey guys, it's LEGO Boy Z3. These are my top 10 favorite WCA events. So today I'm just going to be running through my top 10 favorite events that are held at WCA competitions. So of course the WCA is the World Cube Association, which governs all speed cubing competitions, and there are 18 official events that they have sanctioned. And a while back I did make a video about my top 5 favorite events, but since then my opinions have changed a little bit, and I just wanted to make an overall higher quality video about 10 events instead of 5. Now keep in mind that this is just my personal list, and of course it's going to be very different for everyone, so if you want to share your own opinions, feel free and leave a comment with your own list down below. But we're going to be starting off this list with the square one. So I don't particularly dislike square one, but at the same time I don't particularly like it a whole lot. I don't really practice it a whole lot in general. Personally, I find it kind of hard to get good at. There are a lot of people who are way better at it than me, and it's just kind of like a hard and not very interesting event. There are a lot of complicated algorithms for just like all the different little cases, which are just annoying to learn, and it's just not very interesting to learn them. And also the turning of it is just very awkward, and it's just kind of hard to do algorithms quickly. But it did still make the number 10 spot because I recognize that it is still a very good puzzle. A few years ago when the Chi square one came out, it started being held at a lot more competitions because there was actually good hardware to solve the square one with. But yeah, overall it's kind of a meh event, but I do think it's kind of interesting. Now next up is 2x2. I feel like this event is way further down on my list than it would be on a lot of other people's lists. A lot of people would probably have it like 2, 3, 4. A lot of people even say that it's their main event, which I find kind of crazy because I think it's kind of just a pointless event. I know a lot of people have the same opinion as me. It's just like a very quick and easy event to do. But yeah, I just don't practice it because I don't really find it interesting, and I think that getting fast on it is just learning a whole bunch of algorithms, and I think that's just kind of pointless, and like the single times are kind of dumb too. Like the world record single is like half of a second. That's just kind of ridiculous. I could never turn that fast. Next up, we have the biggest cube on this list, the 5x5. So generally, bigger cubes are slower, and slower cubes are less interesting to solve, which is why this is a little bit higher on the list, but I still do enjoy it as an event for sure. I find this puzzle pretty much just a mix between look ahead and turning speed. So of course you have to look ahead really well because there are so many little tiny pieces and you have to find all the right ones. But at the same time you still have to turn really fast, and I find it kind of difficult personally because I'm not a very fast turner naturally. And I just kind of have to force myself to turn faster and faster and faster to get good times. But as I've been improving on those things, look ahead and turning speed, the event is actually getting quite a bit more fun. A very similar event to that is the 4x4. It's a little bit easier and a little bit faster than the 5x5, but it's still kind of the same concept. The kind of interesting thing about this event, and to a lesser extent 5x5, is when you're in a competition and you get nervous, you start to turn a little bit faster, and so for me that makes me do a little bit better on the 4x4, and so currently my PB single and average of 5 are both set in competitions because I just tend to get better times when I'm competing in them in competitions. Next up, I'd say on this list is 3x3 one-handed. It's just a classic 3x3 event, but doing it with one hand. Now, I actually use a version of ZZ on this cube instead of CFOP, which I would normally use on a 3x3. So I'm actually solving it pretty differently than I would when I'm doing it with two hands, which kind of adds an interesting aspect to it. But at the same time, a lot of the same skills like look ahead are still applicable from the 3x3, and so you kind of tend to improve at kind of a constant rate along with your 3x3, so you don't really have to practice a whole lot of one-handed to get better at it as you improve in 3x3. So it's kind of just an easy event. Personally, I find it one of the least stressful events to do just because I don't really care about it, which just kind of makes it fun in the end. Now next up on this list is Megaminx. I find this event very similar to one-handed as it relates to the 3x3 event. Basically, as you improve in 3x3, you also improve in Megaminx and 3x3 one-handed without really trying a whole lot because it takes a lot of the same skills. It's just a lot of look ahead. Pretty much the entire solve is just F2L, and the intuitive nature of that is just kind of fun. It's not a very stressful event because I don't care a whole lot about it. Just the skills kind of correlate with 3x3 so much that I like it. Next up in 4th place, 3x3 Blindfolded. I'd say this is probably the most challenging event that I've ever done. I actually did it for the first time less than a month ago at a recent competition I went to, and the next competition I'm going to will also have it. This one is very different than any other event because it takes fully concentrating your entire brain on just this one little task, and it also takes a lot of interesting memorization skills which aren't really required in any other cube, just kind of being able to use short-term memory and memorize things on the spot. Now this actually makes it very hard to practice, which is why it isn't further up on the list. Personally, I don't really like practicing blind because you can't like sit down and watch a video while you're doing it. You can't have a conversation with someone because of course you're just concentrating on memorizing the cube. And because I don't practice much, it also makes it very easy to improve when I do practice, and it just kind of makes you feel very accomplished every time you get a good single, or even every time you finish a solve successfully. It's just very rewarding just to see the cube solved after you take off the blindfold. Now next up, getting to the top 3 is really where we get to the interesting things. So we first have 3x3. This is of course the original classic puzzle. It's the most popular of all WCA events, and of course the most competitive event, which is kind of a downside of it. This is a lot of people's favorite event, and there are a lot of good reasons for that. In fact, this is probably the event with the most positive things I could find about it. Overall, it seems to be just a very balanced event. Like, there's a very good balance between intuitive parts like F2L and the algorithmic parts like doing the last layer. There's also a very good balance between turning speed and look ahead. I'm not very good at turning fast, yet I still find it pretty easy to improve on this puzzle. And it's also very balanced in the amount of time that it takes for people to do. Like, if you're slower at it, like 30 seconds to a minute to solving it, it still is entertaining to watch. And even the world-class people at around 5 seconds are still entertaining to watch, and it doesn't go by too quickly. There are also a lot of interesting ways of solving it. There are a lot of viable speed cubing methods out there, a lot of which haven't really even been explored a whole lot. There are a whole lot of subsets and algorithms and things like that that you can learn, and in general, just a lot of different ways of improving. And in fact, I've actually been practicing this event a lot more than any other event recently. I've actually gotten down to quite a bit below sub 17. Now, next up on this list in the number 2 spot would be Pyraminx. Now, this event is unique for some obvious reasons. Of course, the turning of it is very different than any other cubic event. It requires a lot more wrist turns instead of like quick finger tricks like on a 3x3. Now, another obvious thing I like about it is it's a very easy and therefore fast event, which means that it is good for beginners because it's not very challenging, but that can also be kind of a bad thing that is not much of a challenge to it. And also when you get to world class, it's just insanely fast, like a matter of seconds for every single solve, just kind of like 2x2. But the kind of fun thing that happens when you start to get that fast is instead of requiring more and more algorithms, it actually becomes more and more intuitive. So you kind of just make up what you're going to do to solve the cube on the spot as you're inspecting it, and you kind of use different methods on every single solve. And so it just kind of becomes more of a challenge, more of a mental challenge to do than something like a 2x2 that's just spamming algorithms. And this was actually one of the first events that I started doing and getting pretty good in, at least compared to the other events. I'm actually ranked a lot better at Pyraminx and the next event coming up than most other events, and because of that, I have wound up getting in the podium of this event and the next event numerous times in competitions, which is actually pretty fun, being one of the best people at a competition. And now for the final event on this list, we have the Scoob. So this event is actually very similar to Pyraminx. You have this kind of unique, unexpected turning style, which definitely makes it harder to turn than something like a 3x3, and at the same time it's still very easy and fast to solve, just like a Pyraminx. Now, I pretty much like this event because I practice it a lot and I'm good at it. It's actually one of my highest rankings compared to most of my other cubes. I'm by no means really fast at it, but I'm better at it than most other events, I guess. I even actually used to hold the Colorado state record for a while, and part of the reason for all of that is because it's actually the most recently added event. It was added at the beginning of 2014, which is just barely before I started cubing in the WCA. And so because it started off being less competitive, it just gave more people more room to do better in it and be higher in the rankings. Now, the one main criticism for this event is it's pretty much doing the exact same algorithm called the sledgehammer over and over and over again, just in different ways on the cube. Now, personally, I do kind of like this because it kind of means that there's more logic involved. Instead of just learning more and more algorithms for more and more different cases, you kind of just have to look at the different colors and kind of reason and use logic to just kind of figure out which combination of sledgehammers to use. I know that may not be a perfect argument, but personally, I do really like the event, which is why, of course, it's number 1 on this list. Now, I think this video is just about complete. That was a whole lot of information on a whole lot of different cubes in the WCA. It was also a very different style than I've done in the past on my top 10 videos. So if you do like it, then make sure and leave a comment down below and tell me how you liked it. Also, while you're down there, feel free to leave some suggestions down in the comments for other future top 10 videos that you want to see like this in the future. I know they're very popular and I know that a lot of people like them, so I want to keep making them in the future. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!